from JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Wednesday, September the 14th, 2016. Doctors treating former Israeli President Shimon have expressed cautious optimism today regarding the 93-year-old's health. Peres suffered a stroke yesterday and was rushed to Sheba Medical Center, where he was listed in serious condition. He reportedly has shown some improvement since then, and hospital director Professor Yitzhak Kreis said this morning that Peres was still in serious but stable condition, and that he was being moved to the intensive care unit of the neurology department for further treatment and observation. In an update later today, Kreis said that while administering anesthetic drugs to Peres, the medical team realized that he is responsive and probably attentive to what was being communicated, and that he squeezed their hands. Doctors later said that Peres opened his eyes and responded to stimuli. They also said they are keeping the elder statesman lightly sedated to allow his body to rest as they continue to treat him. His family remains by his side. Meanwhile, prayers and good wishes poured in for Peres from Israel and from around the world, from Russian President Vladimir Putin to former U.S. President Bill Clinton and former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. The Memorandum of Understanding, the $38 billion military aid package from the United States to Israel, has been finalized and was signed today. Acting National Security Advisor to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Yaakov Nagel, who arrived in Washington yesterday, signed on behalf of Israel, and Thomas Shannon Jr., who is the Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs, signed on behalf of the U.S. Under the terms of the 10-year deal, Israel agrees not to seek additional funding from Congress for the next decade. The aid package follows almost a year of negotiations between Israeli and American officials and is the biggest pledge of U.S. military assistance made to any country. A Palestinian man who murdered an IDF soldier a year and a half ago has been sentenced to life. Nur al-Din Abu Kashia was sentenced by a Tel Aviv court and will serve a minimum of 40 years for the stabbing death of 20-year-old Almog Shiloni outside the Tel Aviv train station in November of 2014. Shiloni later died of his injuries. The Jim Joseph Foundation announced a $1 million grant yesterday to the Shalom Hartman Institute, or SHI North America. SHI North America is a branch of the Hartman Institute of Jerusalem, which promotes religious pluralism. The 3-year grant will allow for the expansion of its I Engage on Campus program to the West Coast. It educates professionals, academics, and students on college campuses about Jewish peoplehood and the relationship of the Jewish people to the State of Israel. President of SHI North America, Dr. Yehuda Kurtzer, said with the partnership of the Jim Joseph Foundation, we can broaden our geographic reach through a national expansion and transform college campuses into sites of elevated and ethical discourse on Israel. 80-year-old Holocaust survivor Les Held got a big surprise last week at the U.S. Open in New York. Held, a devoted tennis player and fan, was honored at a Legends match where one of his idols, John McEnroe, was playing. Held even got to play against the tennis pro. The surprise was organized by Held's son and family with some help from the Today Show to honor Held for his optimism and giving to others. And taking a look now at our programming for tonight on JBS for Wednesday, September the 14th. At 7 o'clock, Stephen Boehm of the American Jewish Committee and Rebecca Vorwind of the Bronfman Institute discuss the findings of the Pew Report on Jewish Americans. At 8, Professor Vladimir Kanin of Bar-Ilan University in Israel surveys the history of anti-Semitism in Russia. At 9, Mark Golub sits down with IDF Major Amit Deri, who is founder and chairman of Reservists on Duty, who explains how his organization debunks charges made by IDF soldiers who are part of the Breaking the Silence campaign. And at 10, Hussein Abu Bakr talks about his journey of imprisonment in Egypt to asylum in the U.S. in a program of the Israel Connection and Stand With Us from the JCC of Stanford. And coming up right after this newscast tonight at 6:30, Thinking Out Loud with Micah Halpern. And that's the JBS News Update for Wednesday, September the 14th, 2016. I'm Teisha Bader.